Virgin Most Powerful Radio, sharing the gospel with clarity and charity.
And now, Virgin Most Powerful Radio is pleased to present Hands-On Apologetics with renowned Catholic author and apologist, Gary Michuta.
And welcome back, everybody, to Hands-On Apologetics. You have entered into Virgin Most Powerful's Apologetics Dojo, and it's great to be with you today. Yes, I am your host and sensei, and as always, we come back into the dojo to train ourselves to better defend, explain the faith with clarity, charity, and confidence. And it's the highlight of my day. I love being on the program with you guys and working through this material, and also just learning a lot about the faith. And that's really why we get up in the morning every day here at the dojo, is make Jesus better known and loved. And this is one way to do it, folks. Got a great show in store for you today. By the way, for those who missed yesterday's program, we had a special program with Cy Kellett, the host of Catholic Answers Live on. And also another surprise, too, we have the great Terry Barber also sitting in studio, and it was a lot of fun just to chat with him, kind of pull back the curtain about what goes on, with Catholic Answers Live, what's going on in Catholic radio, and just a really cool program. So I'm going to see if I could get Cy back on again. I know, he's a host, so he doesn't really appear on many programs, so that'd be fun to bring him back. But anyway, today's program is also spectacular because we're going to be talking about orthodoxy and the split between Catholics and Orthodox, and mainly the attempts for reunion. There were two very important councils that met that tried to establish reunion between East and West, and of course they didn't. They were successful to a certain measure, but they ultimately failed. So we're going to talk about the councils of Lyons and Florence, what went on at those councils, and what was the aftermath of the councils. And to help us do that, we have our very good friend Erick Ybarra coming on. Of course, you guys know Erick from Reason and Theology, fantastic podcast ministry, along with Michael Lofton and the rest of the gang over there. William Albrecht also is on there, and he's just incredible wealth of information about anything papal. He is the papal apologist. And he also is very, very knowledgeable in Orthodox apologetics. And so he is very well suited to help us better understand these two very important councils, its aftermath, and how that affects our relationship with our separated brothers in the Orthodox Church. So he'll be coming on the other side of the break. Also, it's Friday, and we do cross-fitness training here in the dojo. So we switch gears and move away from looking at informal fallacies with our Finding the Fallacy segment when we look at propaganda. Today's propaganda technique is called latitudes of acceptance. This is very common, something all of us need to be aware of. And unfortunately, I think people didn't get wind of this particular propaganda technique in politics till relatively recent. So we'll go through that. Also, we meet an early church father. Today's early church father is probably one of those early church fathers practically no one ever heard of, but also a very important one is Mincius Felix. We're going to talk about him in a bit. But before I forget, let me give my shout-outs to all of you watching live stream, Facebook, YouTube, all the other platforms. Hello, everybody. Turn my attention over to the social media section of the dojo. And, yeah, thank you so much for all the bright emoji explosion. You guys were ready today. I appreciate that. Also, I want to welcome all of you listening on radio around the country and also via podcast around the world, either via our handy-dandy phone app or our flagship flamethrower of a website, which is virginmostpowerfulradio.org. And that is the way, folks, that you can do apologetics in place and help spread the word about what we do here at the dojo. Invite people in because there's so much great information. Maybe you know somebody who's in the Orthodox faith, would like to know a little bit about the history between us. This would be great to share with them. And all you do is you go to our shows, click on it, select Hands On Apologetics, and you could do all sorts of stuff with the program. You could share it with friends. You could download it, all sorts of cool stuff. And also, I want to thank you all for subscribing as well. If you like the show, please go on YouTube, go to Hands On Apologetics under the Virgin Most Powerful Radio section, and please subscribe because subscribers help visibility. And you need visibility in order to do apologetics and evangelism. We can't reach people, to help fill in these gaps of knowledge unless they know we're out here. So I want to thank all of you for subscribing. And if you haven't subscribed, please do if you enjoyed the show because we could use the help. And, it's such a beautiful thing. You could do evangelism with one click of a mouse, which just floors me. That really does make a difference. So I want to thank all of you who have subscribed, and I want to thank you in advance those who are about to subscribe as well. Let's see. If you have a question for Eric, give us a call, 888-526-2151. That's toll-free, 888-526-2151. Or you can also email us if you have any questions or thoughts. Got some cool emails. Just email us at questions@handsonapologetics.com. That's actually the Sensei's website. That and also GaryMachuda.com. That's the place if you want to get MP3s of talks I've done, conferences, debates, books. That GaryMachuda.com is the place to go. But handsonapologetics.com is the one that I keep you updated on who's the guest and things like that involved with the radio show and just other things that I do as well. So, by the way, I should also mention that free book offer that I think was mentioned by Sai yesterday is still available if you're interested. If you want to join my mailing list, you go to handsonapologetics.com, you scroll down, and you'll see an entry form. Just put your name and email address, so you go on my mailing list, and you get a free copy of my book Behind the Bible? Gosh, I forgot the title. Behind the Bible, What the Bible Assumes You Already Know. This is available in hard copy for about $9. So you could get a $9 book for free as an ebook copy just by joining my mailing list. And I'm going to have some new things popping up. So you want to be on the mailing list just so you can stay abreast of all that. So anyway, without further ado, why don't we jump to the Finding the Fallacy, which is a propaganda technique. It's latitudes of acceptance, and this is what it is. If a person's message is outside the bounds of acceptance for an individual or a group, most techniques will engender psychological reaction. Okay, so basically, if someone proposes something that's really outside the bounds of propriety, there is always a reaction. But there's a technique to get around that, and that is to take an even more extreme position so that the original position looks more moderate and more acceptable. So, in other words, if you're arguing for, let's say, a $10 tax, which people would see as unacceptable, you don't originally start with the $10. You go with $100. Right, something that no one would accept, and then they would then view the $10 tax as being more moderate. Where if you started with the $10 tax, people would balk at it. So that's kind of how it works: is you take the ultimate extreme position, and then by retracting back to your original position, it actually looks a lot more acceptable. And that is a propaganda technique that's used a lot, especially in politics, because you'll advocate for something that is ridiculously out of bounds in order to get something that most people wouldn't have accepted had you first proposed it. So keep that in mind. I mean, that's also involved just with ordinary apologetics and morality, things like that. Appealing to the extreme in order to make something that would otherwise be unacceptable appear more acceptable. Okay, let's jump to the Meet the Early Church Father for today. And like I said, he is Mincius Felix, who flourished sometime around AD 218, 235. Biographical details of Mincius Felix is utterly lacking according to Jurgen's faith of the early fathers. We can say of him only that he was a Christian, a layman, a Roman, and rather distinguished member of the legal profession in that city. He is the author of only one work, a dialogue with Octavius, written between the year 218, 235 AD. And these dates are basically the only dates we have to date when he lived. So that's why the date of the document corresponds to approximately when he flourished. Now, in his work, Octavius, it's preserved in a single Paris manuscript from the 9th century, where it stands as the 8th book in Arnomius's Against the Pagans. It is, however, an authentic work of Mincius Felix, a work of very gentle character and of deep insight. It deserves to be much more widely read than it is at present, according to Jurgens. The date of the work given above is assigned to it by most authors of the present time, yet it is by no means certain. The most vexing thing, since its considerable point of historical curiosity hinges upon it, is its literary dependence. It appears that Octavius is very, very close to Tertullian's Apology, which dates the latter date being about 197 AD. And so the real question is, who ripped off whom? Since both Mincius and Tertullian both wrote in Latin, and whichever of them has temporal priority deserves the title of the first Christian author to write in the Latin language. And that is our early church father for today, Octavius. Coming up on the other side of the break, we have master apologist Erick Ybarra. We're going to be talking about the councils of Lyons and Florence. Stay tuned, folks. More to come.
Join VMPR live on YouTube September 12th, 2020 for our latest free conference, The Ultimate Challenge. This exclusive virtual event will feature a brand new talk from Jesse Romero, How Apologetics Brought Me Back to Faith, plus never-before broadcast video presentations from Dr. Scott Hahn, Father Mitch Pacwa, and the late, great Father Benedict Groeschel. Go to vmpr.org to register now and get ready to face the ultimate challenge.
Did you know my mom's gonna have a baby? She is? Will it be a boy? Or will it be a girl? We don't know yet, but we heard the heartbeat and my dad said this is gonna be someone very special. You mean like being a president? Or maybe a doctor? Well, probably maybe like a singer or dancer, I think.
Hello, my name is Marianne Koharski. I'm the director of Pro-Life Across America. We know that every baby is a miracle and has the potential to do great things. If you know someone who is pregnant or in need of alternatives or assistance, or would like to support the work of Pro-Life Across America, please call 1-800-366-7773 or visit our website at prolifeacrossamerica.org. Pro-Life Across America is non-political and totally educational.
Pro-Life Across America, the Billboard people.
This is Terry Barber. I want to thank you for your support here at Virgin Most Powerful Radio. Here's an easy way to do it. If you're going to sell or buy a house, call Real Estate for Life, 877-543-3871, because they're going to get you a Christ-centered agent to purchase your home or to sell your home. And at the close of escrow, a portion of his commission goes right back to Virgin Most Powerful Radio. Call 877-543-3871. Thank you so much for your support.
Now, back to Hands-On Apologetics with Gary Machuda. If you'd like to join the conversation, call 888-526-2151. Here's Gary.
And welcome back, everybody. Hands on Apologetics. And as you know, sometimes we look at the differences between Catholicism and Orthodoxy and investigate what separates us and also what reunites us. And when we're talking about that, we have to talk about two very important reunion councils of Lyons and also Florence. And to help us do that, to look at these councils and their aftermath, we have Master Apologist Erick Ybarra. Many of you are already familiar with Erick's work there on reasonandtheology.com, or also his other works at erickybarra.org. And Erick, welcome back to the show. Erick, I think you're on mute. I can't hear you. Let's see. Richard, is that on his end or is that on our end? Okay, yeah.
How about now?
I got you. I can hear you now.
Okay. Oh, it's great to be back on, Gary. I'm really happy to be back on and look forward to talking about these two important topics.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said in the first segment of the show, you're the man when it comes to papal apologetics and also Catholic Orthodox apologetics. Just really quickly, what was it that interested you in Orthodoxy, and how did you come to know so much about, the history between us?
Well, that's an interesting question because, I was in the Anglican Church before I entered into the Catholic Church, and as an Anglican, a lot of our intellectual apologetics against Rome involved pointing to the Eastern Orthodox as a proof that you can be apostolic without Rome. So the Eastern churches were kind of like a monument on the wall, you could say, to sort of justify the Church of England's departure from communion with the Pope. And so a lot of Anglicans are they made it a particular study to look into the Orthodox Church. So when I was Anglican and I was reading Anglican literature, the Greco-Russian Church would come up all over the place. So it really got my interest. And then also there was an exodus of Anglicans going into the Orthodox Church in the middle of the 21st century. So when I was coming to see the inadequacies of the Anglican Church, of the Church of England, in terms of history anyway, Orthodoxy was definitely more in sight than Catholicism. So, but I also knew that Catholicism needed to be dealt with. It needed to be studied, and not from the corners of those who dislike Catholicism, but to go to those sources that make Catholicism look the best. And so I to be fair. So when I studied Catholicism, I couldn't just go into the surface because I needed to go into what really divided the East and the West, and to help my decision, because I was kind of torn between the East and the West. So it required me to go. It required me to penetrate deeper than the surface of both communions, East and West. And so that's how I initially got into it. But since then, it has been such an adventurous journey because there's just so much to learn. We have a history that goes back not just to 1054, but all the way back to the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th century. And I in my small lifetime, I will never be able to read everything out there on it. So it's just been an ascending education for me. And as I ascend, I realize I know a lot less than I originally thought.
Join the club.
Yeah.
I think that's felt by everybody. What's amazing is I can't speak for everybody, but I think in the average Catholic heart, there's this real longing for the East to come into full communion, with both of us. And it's just strange that, that we just can't seem to get it together, so to speak, which kind of brings up these councils of at least there were attempts for reunion.
That's right. And one of the secrets of history that doesn't get communicated as much, and possibly because it's just not, there's not a lot of to be drawn from it per se when Catholics today dialogue with Orthodox. But, a lot of people look back at the undivided church all the way to 1054. But that's not quite what the real canvas shows. What the real canvas shows is that there had been a number of divisions already between the East and the West from the 4th century all the way to the end of the first millennium. It just so happens that they were patched. They were patched together successfully. There were great casualties in the process. And so you do have East and West already coming out of communion. For example, during the Arian crisis, it was, the East, by and large, went into the Arian theology, which had degrees of its own. But as a result, it broke away from the Church of Rome for many years. And it wasn't until Theodosius I mandated that the religion of the empire was going to be the Nicene religion. And since then, you had East coming back into communion with Rome. And then you had this again with the Nestorians. Nestorius left Constantinople because he was shunned by the majority there, but he didn't quit. He went to the Persian part of the East, and the Church of Persia owes its influence to Nestorius. And so you had that part of Byzantium going further east and developing into a Persian schism from Rome. And that schism, to a small degree, still exists to this very day. Then you have the Miaphysites. This was the reaction to Nestorius, where Eutyches and some of the ultra-Cyrillian theologians separated from Rome after the Council of Chalcedon. And, that made up Egyptian, Syriac, and Armenian Christianity all the way up to this very day. And that was a split. They started off as Eastern churches in communion with Rome, and then they ended up coming out of communion with Rome. Now, we were able to successfully bring back a great deal, the Greek Byzantines, through the formula of Hormisdas in the 6th century. So we were able to get East and West back into communion again then, but a schism would happen again during the monothelite controversy, the issue of one will, energy, and operation in Christ. There are two. And so this was a division again with the Byzantium Church and the Church of Rome. And that was healed, thankfully, by the Council of Constantinople 681, again, largely due to imperial cooperation. But then this would fall through with the iconoclastic emperors who came in the 8th century, beginning with Leo the Isaurian. And unfortunately, many of the Byzantine clergy went along with the imperial policy of destroying the images. And so that caused a division between Rome and the Byzantines. And that schism did not get fully healed until there was a partial healing in 787 with Nicaea II. And then there was a fuller healing in 842 under Empress Theodora. That's a famous victory for the icons for the Eastern churches. They continue to celebrate that day today, known as the Sunday of Orthodoxy. So at 842, you have a repair of the Byzantines and the Latins, only to get threatened again under Photius in the latter part of the 9th century. And of course, that was a couple of decades, but it was healed in 879. I think we talked about that last time.
Yep.
So when we get to the end of the first millennium, we still see major points where the East and the West were out of communion. And the only way that unity was achieved was when the Byzantines finally could cooperate with the mandate that the Pope was making as a terms of communion. So that brings us to the second millennium, where those papal terms were not as, they didn't want to cooperate with them. So, the first major attempt at reunion was the Council of Lyons in 1274. So this is a massive council, not really talked about much, but at least in internet apologetics, it's a discussion and for anybody who's studying Byzantine history. But this follows a major event in the East, namely the sack of Constantinople in 1204 under the Venetian Latins, the Crusaders, not following the Pope's order, went into Constantinople and attempted to restore the throne of the original claimant to the Byzantine throne, but ended up not being successful. And then they ended up not getting paid what they were agreed to be paid by this false claimant to the throne. And so as a result, they had no more money to return home, and they retaliated by sacking the city. And it's a sad time in Western history. The Pope, of course, did not approve this. And, Pope Innocent III was very saddened to hear about it. But sadly, the popes they regretted that situation, but they also saw it as providence because the Byzantines would not submit to the Filioque or the papacy. So by the time you have Pope Gregory X come into office, which is in 1270, you have Pope Gregory X, and then you have the Byzantine Emperor Michael VIII Paleologus. And Michael VIII Paleologus, this is going 70 years after the sack of Constantinople. You have the recapturing of Constantinople by the Byzantines because it had been under Latin captivity for about 70 years. Despite that, Michael Paleologus was able to convince the Greek hierarchy that reunion with the Latins should be front and center in order.
I see your photos, and actually, I'm starting to hear the music coming up. So this is actually a great place for us to break, because we are right in the thick of this very interesting discussion on the councils of Lyon and Florence. Reunion? No. But what happened, and what is the aftermath? More to come on the other side of the break with Erick Ybarra right after this. Stay tuned.
Hi, this is Jesse Romero from the Terry and Jesse Show, also from Jesus 911. Let's face it, we all need to use the internet, but we need screen accountability. Why? Pornography is a huge problem, especially on the internet. And every time we tap into the internet, we get bombarded with images and temptations that degrade our humanity. So we need Covenant Eyes to block these pornographic sites and advertisements from infiltrating our lives. Covenant Eyes helps us take custody of our eyes and custody of our intellect. So I recommend you go to covenanteyes.com and type in the promo code VMPR to support the network. Protect yourself and your family from the imminent threats on the internet. www.covenanteyes.com, code VMPR, live porn free. Thank you for listening to Virgin Most Powerful Radio. Thank you. God bless you. Keep the faith.
This is Terry Barber. I want to thank you for supporting Virgin Most Powerful Radio. And here's an easy way to support us by going to smile.amazon.com and type in Catholic Resource Center or Virgin Most Powerful Radio. And when you log in your Amazon account and you purchase products, a portion of it will go right back in supporting Virgin Most Powerful Radio. And it doesn't cost you a dime. I want to thank you ahead of time because that supports us year-round. May God bless you and your family. Buying or selling your home or your business property? This is Terry Barber. Real Estate for Life underwrites the Terry and Jesse Show. And they can connect you to one of 900 pro-life real estate agents around the world. And when they receive their referral fee, they will give 80% of it to a pro-life organization. Wow! That's 80%! realestateforlife.org, 877-LIFE-US1.
This is Jesse Romero. You're listening to Hands-On Apologetics with Gary Machuda on Virgin Most Powerful Radio.
And welcome back, everybody. We're chatting with Master Apologist Erick Ybarra of erickybarra.org and also reasonandtheology.com. Talk about reunion councils between East and West, specifically the councils of Lyons and Florence. And Erick, right before the break, you were talking about Michael Paleologos, about the emperor wishing to have reunion with the West. What was his motivation? Was it he was a very pious Catholic who, wished reunion, or were there other factors? Okay, yeah, we're having some technical difficulties. Okay, so I gotta remember that question. While we're getting Erick back online, I just want to remind you that you can register for Virgin Most Powerful Radio's special event on September 12th, where you're going to have a 4-part debate available, September 20th. 4-part debate with Father Mitch Pacwa and Dr. Scott Hahn, plus also unheard of talk from Benedict Rochelle. May he rest in peace. And also a bonus feature of Jesse Romero on how apologetics brought him back to the church. And, of course, that's a subject that is near and dear to my heart because in many ways apologetics, I never left the church, but it certainly had revolutionized my life as a Catholic because for some reason, growing up, being catechized, you know what the church believes, but you never know why. And once I realized that there are real logical, historical, common sense answers for why we do the things we do, why we believe the things we believe as Catholics, that totally changed everything. And anyway, you already know my story. But anyway, mark down your calendars, folks, because we're having this special event September 12th, 9 a.m., 5 p.m., Mitch Pacwa, Scott Hahn, Father Benedict Rochelle, and also Justin Romero with the special talk. So check it out. Go to virginmostpowerfulradio.org website and sign up for it if you're interested in it. Richard, do we have Erick back? Okay. Yeah, we're still having technical problems with Erick. Well, anyway, so yeah, check it out, virginmostpowerfulradio.org. And I also should give, while we're waiting to get Erick back on the phone, he has done a tremendous amount of work in the area of apologetics, especially, like I said, with Orthodox Catholic apologetics and just papal information. I really recommend his blog, I guess you could say. It's erickybarra.org. And he has some very good, well-thought-out articles. As you can tell, Erick is an encyclopedia of information. But not only that, but he also is able to organize it and explain it in a very understandable way. And so if you have friends, perhaps, that are talking to Orthodox, or perhaps you have Orthodox neighbors who are asking questions, highly recommend erickybarra.org website. And the other thing he's also very much involved in that I also give a very enthusiastic thumbs up is reasonandtheology.com. Let me say that again, reasonandtheology.com. That is Michael Lofton's site, and Erick Ybarra is also a co-host there, along with William Albrecht. Many of you are familiar with William. He's a favorite of the show. And the three of them interview and also have lots of debates with everybody. So they have atheistic debates. They debate all different types of Protestantism. And, of course, Catholic Orthodox debates. And they really go in depth as far as issues. And the beautiful thing about it is they keep the focus on light and not heat. So so we have very substantive discussions on reasoningtheology.com. I really recommend it. Plus, they get into real interesting issues like the glossia ordinaria and things like that you just won't find anywhere else. But anyway, I understand Erick's on the phone. So, Erick, right before the break, actually, that was a good place to stop for the break. You mentioned Michael Paleologos wishing to be reunited to the West. And my question is, what was his motivation? Was he just a very devout Catholic who always wanted to retain unity, or were there other motivating factors for this?
Yes, sorry about that, Gary. Yeah, so his motivation seemed to be, according to historical record, to the desire to prevent Charles of Anjou to take over Byzantine territories in southern Italy. And so he figured if he could establish peace with the Pope, that then the Western military would respect their territories. But they kind of viewed them as schismatics. The Easterners, they had territory in southern Italy. And so in order to prevent, capture and being overtaken, he forged a discussion with the Pope on reunion to bring peace between East and West again. And there may have been more motivations, but that seems to be what historians are drawn to say.
Well, okay. Yeah, that's very interesting because, it's rare that somebody operates from just a single motive. There's usually a lot of other things tied up with it. So, so Constantinople was under Western rule for a while, and then he steps in, right?
Yeah, he steps in, and he was basically given the city back. They just walked in, and the Latins sort of agreed to give it back to the Byzantines, and as a result, the West lost their Latin kingdom in Constantinople, and as a result of that, the Latins came back, to the east, or to the west. And the popes were dissatisfied because it meant a further break in division between the East and the West. One of the purposes for that Latin kingdom was to forge union with the East again, but it wasn't going to happen on those terms. But thankfully, Michael Paleologos, Michael VIII, just started discussions, and that's when the Pope convened the Council of Lyons in 1274. And in the fifth session, they were able to agree to the creed with the Filioque, but they allowed the Easterners to have their own creed without the Filioque. But the idea was that they had to agree with the Filioque doctrine, and they had to be okay with the Latins chanting it in the liturgy with the Filioque. And then papal primacy was also there was an official decree that the emperor had to sign, and the Latin hierarchy signed it, and the Greek hierarchy signed it. But it should be said that the Greek hierarchy were handpicked by the emperor, and those who were already predisposed to follow the emperor's decision. At home, the Greeks were still very upset with the Latins over the sack of Constantinople. They still had plenty of convictions against liturgical practices of the Latins, like the use of unleavened bread and the Filioque in the creed. Those two things were massive problems for the Byzantines theologically and liturgically. So this union that was forged, what seems to be just very few years between the East and the West was quickly dissolved by a council in Constantinople held in 1285 in Blackgarnet. And at this council, the Patriarch of Constantinople repudiated the Union of Lyons. And so that they repudiated the Filioque. You had a unionist party in Constantinople under John Veccus, and he was the former Patriarch of Constantinople. And so he was able to dive into the fathers, and he became convinced that the Filioque was true.
Interesting.
But when the Easterners, the bigger theological voice in the Greek East swallowed him up, put him in cuffs, and arrested him, and replaced him with the patriarch that was against the Filioque. Then they held that synod, which repudiated the union. The Pope excommunicated Michael VIII Paleologus. It was division back once again, unhappily. Yeah. And negotiations for reunion would not occur again until the mid part of the 15th century with the council that originally began in Ferrara in 1439. So we're moving in now to the second attempt at union at Florence. And how's our time? Are we coming to another break here?
You got about a minute and a half.
Okay. Well, good. So, the Council of Florence has actually got great ramifications for East-West issues, but also for Western issues, because there had been a dispute within the West, within the popes. There was three claimants, rather, I should say. There was one pope. You had the Great Western Schism, and then you had conciliarism as a heresy that was growing, and then you had the issue with the Easterners and the Latin Church. So all those issues are coming to play at the Council of Florence in 1439. And once again, it's John VIII Paleologus who is, due to military concerns, there's the Ottoman Turks that are encroaching into Byzantine territory and eventually Constantinople. And what better than to get the military of the West to come and protect the holy city of Constantinople than by coming into union with the Pope. And so, John VIII Paleologus and Pope Eugenius IV actually was under Martin V, but his successor, Eugenius IV, picked up it fell into his lap to hold the council, agreed to hold a council in Ferrara, Italy, and then later it was transferred to Florence.
Okay, well, I hear the music coming up, Eric. That's a great place to stop. We are chatting with Erick Ybarra of erickybarra.org and also reasonandtheology.com, talking about attempts for a reunion, East-West. Stay tuned, folks. More to come on the other side of the break.
Welcome, Daniel. You're on the line. What's on your mind, brother?
Hi, I just wanted to share a testimony about Virgin Most Powerful Radio. I had a buddy at work who, he's a lukewarm Catholic guy, and I wanted him to start listening to the Terry and Jesse show, so I kept telling him to download the app, and he kept putting me off. So one day, I grabbed his phone and I downloaded the app for him. I went on vacation, and I kept telling him to listen to it. He was kind of put me off. I came back from vacation. He comes to my cubicle, and he says to me, "Hey, man, I've been listening to Terry and Jesse's show, and it's great." And it's made a big impact in his life. The guy, he's going to weekly adoration a couple times a week. He goes to the Mass in the morning. He's an on-fire Catholic, and he promotes the Terry and Jesse show on the Virgin Most Powerful Radio.
Daniel, what a testimony, and I want to encourage our listeners to get those cards by going to virginmostpowerfulradio.org and do what Daniel's doing. Go out and spread the faith by inviting people to listen to Virgin Most Powerful. Daniel, thanks for your testimony, brother. God love you.
You're welcome.
Jesus said in Matthew 26, "Stay awake and pray that you may not enter into temptation." According to St. Ephrem, Jesus, who feared nothing, experienced fear and asked to be freed from death, although he knew it was impossible. How much more must we persevere in prayer before temptation assails us, so that we may be freed when the test has come? May God grant that we may withstand temptation and carry out His will in all things.
Buying or selling your home or your business property? This is Terry Barber. Real Estate for Life underwrites the Terry and Jesse Show, and they can connect you to one of 900 pro-life real estate agents around the world. And when they receive their referral fee, they will give 80% of it to a pro-life organization. Wow, that's 80%. realestateforlife.org, 877-LIFE-US1.
Now, back to Hands-On Apologetics with Gary Machuda. If you'd like to join the conversation, call 888-526-2151. Here's Gary.
And welcome back, everybody. We're chatting with Erick Ybarra about the two reunion councils of Lyons and Florence. And, so we're just starting to look at Florence. Florence is such an interesting council. It really is a council on the move, isn't it? It starts off in one place and moves all sorts of places.
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, if we want to include the Western openings, we're going back to Basel. And then, we're going back to Basel, and then it's being transferred once again until it hits Florence. Until it hits Ferrara, and then from Vienna before that, and then Ferrara, and then from Ferrara to Florence for financial considerations. And this is one of the reasons why you have certain books will say that the Council of Florence lasted like 15 years, because it didn't really get to finish, I think, in Lateran in 1447 or 1446. There's so many other issues related to Western conciliarist concerns. And it's one of the reasons why Florence has more than just the Eastern division at stake, but it's most famous for its successful reunion with the Greeks. And not many people know this, but the Armenians and the Coptic Church was also there of Egypt, and those churches were not in communion with the Byzantines. But they were no less east. Mm-hmm. So this was a time for the whole family to get back together. From ancient churches all of the churches that have that umbilical cord that go back to the apostles came to this council, and it was successful in the sense that there was 700, give or take, Greek delegates. And there were some primary voices like the Sarian of Nicaea, Isidore of Kiev. Isidore brought a Russian delegation of bishops from the north. This was monumental, and obviously on the table was the issue of papal primacy, but that wasn't the primary issue. The primary issue was the filioque. Mm. And that's what took up the most of the hooks and the right crosses between the Latins and the Greeks at the council, and it was successful in that eventually the Greeks finally came to see that at least the Western fathers and certain of the Eastern fathers really did teach that within the theological nature of God, there is this procession or this coming forth of the Holy Spirit from both the Father and the Son, or through the Son. And with a maneuvering of the language to match each other according to proper nuance, many of the Greeks were convinced that the filioque was orthodox.
Wow. And that's a huge achievement.
That was a massive achievement.
Yeah.
There was one bishop, and I'm sure there was others, but their voice wasn't as important. Mark of Ephesus, who did not agree. He was the only one, in fact, of the signers who did not sign the decree of the council. Mark of Ephesus would prove to be very influential in breaking apart this successful council, because once it was signed in 1439, the Greeks went back home, and so you have John Palaeologus the Eighth. He is for the Union. So when the emperor is for the Union, that's major. That means that most of the Byzantines are going to at least externally go through with it. Then you had all the Greek delegates signing the agreement at the council. Then the successor patriarch of Constantinople, he succeeded Joseph the patriarch, agreed to the union. So now you have emperor and patriarch accepting the union of Florence in the east. So you have, and this lasts for years. But you have Mark of Ephesus, who it goes around and is giving sermons and talks to monks and clergy, and he's able to turn the convictions of one important figure as well, Gennadius Scholarius, who was actually for the union at one point, and then disagreed with it and repudiated it afterwards, and he eventually ascended to the throne of Constantinople later in life. But the East starts to disintegrate from the Union as a result of the influence of Mark of Ephesus, as well as the many voices that agreed with him and were in symphony against the Filioque, the papacy, purgatory, the issue of unleavened bread, the issue of the epiclesis in the liturgy. And if any of your listeners go to a Byzantine church, they'll hear the prayer, which now is in the Roman canon since the mid 20th century, where they pray for the Holy Spirit to come down and turn the gifts of bread and wine into the body and blood of Christ. The Byzantines saw that as part of the form of the sacrament, and the Latins always said it was the words of institution that changed the elements of bread and wine into the body and blood of Christ. Well, this was another issue that caused certain divisions. Well, most of the Greeks agreed that we came to an agreement at Florence. But around 14, you have a really major event happen. John VIII was wanting military help, right? Well, once the council was successful, the Pope tried to send as many military troops as possible to go help the Byzantines against the Turks, but other military men from the farther west were not cooperative and couldn't manage to bring enough men to hold Constantinople against the Turks. So in 1453, one of the most pivotal moments in all of our history, what today for the Easterners was the Holy Roman Empire fell by the Ottoman Turks, and Constantinople, the Holy Cathedral Hagia Sophia, was symbolically taken over by these Turks, and then it was renamed Turkey in light of the namesake of those who took it over. And so now today, Turkey is where that's where all this rich history comes from. And as a result of that, a lot of the Greeks thought that it was punishment from God for their agreement with the Latins at the Council of Florence. And so in 1480, I want to say 1470s or 1480s, they held a council and officially repudiated the Council of Florence in atonement and in trying to reparate for the sins of their ancestors who agreed, or their forefathers who agreed with the Latins at the Council of Florence.
Wow. Yeah, that's what a mixed history. Now, one question I have for you, like you said, the Council of Florence not only dealt with the Greeks, but they also dealt with other groups like the Jacobites and so on. Did those unions hold, or was it did all of those agreements fall apart?
Well, the clearest failure was the Byzantine healing. That did not last. The Armenians, the Coptics, you have your Jacobite Union and all these that signed the decrees of union, the bulls of union, They did not last, but there was significant parts that continued in union with Rome. For example, the Maronites, that still to this day are in communion with the church. And, today it might be used as a slur, but they were Uniates. That's what they were called. They were those Easterners who came into union with Rome. So there is abiding lineages, but for one reason or the other, there were divisions once again, and it's kind of difficult because they had conditions for obedience to the Pope, and when those conditions failed, they felt free to break communion, but others felt that they needed to stay with the Pope, and that's one of the reasons why we have so many of the other rites. We have 24 rituals, 24 rites in the Catholic Church. One of them is the Latin rite, and the great majority of the other ones are Eastern.
Yeah. By the way, I know this is a little off topic, but who were the Jacobites?
I'm not too keen on the history of the Jacobites. I've kept my fingers on the pages with the Byzantines, and that's certainly next on my project because I have a close friend of mine who's a Syriac Orthodox, and we talk a lot about the history prior to the end of the first millennium, and I haven't quite gotten to speaking in that area yet. So before I say something and embarrass myself, I prefer to prepare more before I go into their history. But yeah, that's it is an interesting group.
Yeah, that's funny because you spent your time with the decree with the Greeks, and I spent my time with the decree with the Jacobites because that's where they reaffirmed the canon. But I haven't found much information on them, so that's kind of a lacuna in my own. So if you find out anything, please pass it along to me.
Oh, I absolutely will.
Yeah, fascinating subject. So, did it change things in the West?
Yes, absolutely. It was Florence symbolizes the victory over conciliarism, which was one of the ugly heads that came about from the papal schism between the three claimants, which said that a council is the ordinary subject of supreme authority in the church. And so they passed a decree at the Council of Constance, which said that the council has a right to discipline the Pope if it wants to. And so this lasted for a while because that was the only way to heal the papal schism, was to get a council to sort of be in the driver's seat for the time being. But when the Pope was free to exercise his judgment, he did not ratify that, and so you have the Council of Basel, which tries to put conciliarism back on the table, and Pope Eugene cancels that council and calls one enacts one in Florence, where he successfully was able to dogmatize papal primacy of universal jurisdiction over the church, even over council.
Very good. Well, Erick, hey, it's always an education to have you on this show. Thank you so much for coming on.
No, thank you for having me. I'm sorry about the technical difficulties.
No problem, my friend. And that is Erick Ybarra. By the way, check out, he has so much great information. Go to erickybarra.org. And, of course, check out reasonandtheology.com. They have also lots of great stuff on YouTube. Check it out. Wow, the hour is flown, but never fear, because the Terry and Jesse show will soon be here with High Impact Catholic Talk. Thank you so much for listening, everybody, and have a great weekend, and God willing, we'll be back again next week.
In the 1990s, I lived and worked in Hollywood. But when my wife Betty's mom took ill, we relocated to Orange County. And it was during this time in our lives that I converted to Catholicism. Once my eyes were opened to the truth, I couldn't learn enough about the faith. But I had less free time than ever, especially with a long commute. That's when I discovered the real value of Catholic audio. Listening to cassette tapes transformed my daily commute into a miniature retreat. And that's the beauty of Virgin Most Powerful Radio today. Since the podcasts are archived, you can listen anytime on our smartphone app. I know how listening to Catholic audio can bring you closer to Christ and His Church. So I encourage you to visit the App Store or go to vmpr.org and download the app today. It just might change your life. I'm Matthew Arnold for Virgin Most Powerful Radio.